All right, so we're going to close out this module on civil rights by talking about women's rights and the LGBTQ civil rights movement. Women's rights. So we talked about this a little bit already, right? When we talked about the Constitutional Convention, Philadelphia, 1787. How many women delegates were there at that convention? Obviously none at all. We remember, right, Abigail Adams, as her husband John headed off to the convention, telling John, remember the ladies, remember the ladies. I think he must have forgotten, because we know, right, that women's right to vote was not protected at the convention. So yeah, we get off to a slow start on civil rights for women here in America. And we don't really get progress on that, because, you think about, right, the 15th Amendment that guarantees the right to vote on the basis of race, which at least nominally back then would have guaranteed black men in the South could vote, but not black women anywhere. So the suffrage movement, which in some ways kicks off in 1848 with that Seneca Convention that our book talks about, but doesn't really get into full gear until a few decades later. There is a hard push, right, by the suffragette movement to get women the right to vote guaranteed in the Constitution. Now look, some of the leading lights of that movement, Susan B. Anthony and many others, some of their arguments were pretty racist. They were. Their argument to white men was, give us the right to vote, us educated white women, affluent, high-status white women, and we'll counterbalance the immigrant vote, right? Because these grimy immigrant men from places like Ireland and Italy, they're allowed to vote, but we're not. Well, what's up with that? So it was pretty sketchy. Some of the arguments were sketchy, but the cause was good. The cause was a good one. Right? So women get the right to vote guaranteed, built into the Constitution in 1920 via the 19th Amendment. But so now women can vote, but nothing else has changed, right? We didn't sort of change how we thought about gender, and we didn't change the economic landscape for women at that time. Right? So if you think of civil rights as a stool with three legs, you need political empowerment, economic empowerment, and social empowerment. The right to vote brought political empowerment, but not social or economic empowerment. Right? We didn't rethink the meaning of gender. So typically back then when women would vote, they would vote as instructed by their father, their brother, their husband, right? Because we didn't reconceptualize gender, that women are independent actors with autonomy and power in their own right, not related to their brother or their father or their husband, right? And of course, economic empowerment was still out of reach here. But it's progress. It's important progress. Necessary, but not sufficient. So we get then, right, the need building over the decades, in some ways, like with the Black Civil Rights Movement, accelerated by World War II, when you had, right, while the men were away fighting, women moving into the workplace, Rosie the Riveter, right, and then when men come back from the war, women come back out of the workplace. But now, right, women have had a taste of economic empowerment. So you got what's called the second wave of American feminism beginning in about 1964. And there the focus is on economic and social issues, right? Let's reconceptualize how we think about gender, right? Women have value independent of their husband, their brother, their husband. They're autonomous, free actors, equal to men. And the focus as well is on issues like abortion, economic opportunity, domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and divorce law. And a lot of this was driven by a kind of a legal strategy, not just a grassroots, get out there and vote strategy, but also a legal strategy of using the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Title IX, which deals with women in education, gender and education, to achieve some of these more ambitious goals that are part of the second wave. A lot of success there, right? A lot of success on all sorts of issues, like you get Roe v. Wade on abortion, You get the Equal Protection Clause being used with aggression to give women better opportunities in the workplace. Title VII to protect them from sexual harassment in the workplace, and so on. Legislation like the Violence Against Women Act in, I believe, 1994. And more recently, I would say a focus within the movement on questions of intersectionality, was just a fancy way of saying that not all women are similarly situated with all other women, right? Are you a black woman, a Latina woman, a white woman, an Asian American woman, right? Your issues might be a little bit different based upon the intersection of your racial identity and your gender identity. And also class, right? Are you upper class, middle class, working poor, homeless? Right? That matters too, right? The concerns of high status women might be different than the concerns of low status women. Different issues, different concerns, different agendas. And then, right, sort of the confluence of all three of those things, gender, race, and class. I think a necessary part of better understanding how we should think about and act on women's rights. And then most recently, right, the Me Too movement, dealing with basically sexual assault and harassment in the workplace, suggesting, right, that although a lot of progress was made in that second wave, there's work to be done, right? It's not like we solved the problem of sexual harassment back in the 1980s. We didn't, right? Me Too suggests that we didn't. There are ongoing difficult questions in terms of ensuring that we don't take our eye off the ball of women's civil rights.